Deadshot Golden Gun now refunds ammo on Golden Gun Final Blows instead of an ignition, now extends super duration on Golden Gun Final Blows, and energy diminishes with Final Blows, grants less and Crucible.
Okay then. Gentlemen, are the diminishing returns in the room with us right now?
It's high noon.
Gamers, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about a Hunter Gunslinger build where you're going to be able to fire 500 million golden gun shots consecutively. And that number is only slightly exaggerated. Trust me, I've done the math. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's build, maybe consider hitting that sub button. You know, we're getting close to 70k and it'd be nice. Let's move on to the build itself now. I've actually lost count at how many times Golden Gun has found a way to be a self-sustaining infinite in some way in this game, but I'm not going to complain, because now we get to play McCree Simulator. I mean Cassidy. The goal of our build today is simple. Get your super as fast as humanly possible, then find a small army in a room, and eliminate every single one of them with your Golden Gun. Let's start with my stats first. Given that this build is going to be heavily leaning into our super and getting it as fast as we can, the two stats that I'm going to lean into are going to be super for Golden Gun, obviously, with a font mod giving me 200 overall for max damage and cooldown, and then the other stat is going to be the melee stat. Now, the reason I mentioned the melee stat is because I'm going to combine that with my glove mods, which are going to be 3 copies of heavy-handed. Every time I get a melee kill, I'll make an Aura of Power. Now, some of you may not know this, but this has a hidden cooldown normally. If you wear 1 copy of heavy-handed, you only can make an orb every 10 seconds. If you have 2 copies, it's 5 seconds, but if you have 3 copies, it's going to be 1 second of cooldown. And our initial loop with that is going to be using the Knife Trick melee with Facet of Torches, which will give us Radiant every time we get a melee kill, and then also utilizing Knock 'em Down as one of our aspects, which states, while Radiant, Final Blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refund your melee energy. Here's a demonstration. Keep my super bar in mind. Oh look, I got my super. Now let's move on to the rest of the kit. And you know what's funny? I've shown you guys an infinite super, and what if I told you in a little bit it'll get even crazier? Anyway, here's the kit first. So, for my abilities, I have Gambler's Dodge, just to get my melee back in the event that I happen to, let's say, miss my knives, and I need my melee back to continue my chain. In my jump, it could be whatever you want. I prefer triple jump. For the melee, I'm using Knife Trick just for ease of use. I get it instantly back. It's easy to hit on enemies. It's perfect. And in the grenade, you can run whatever you want. I'm running Healing Grenade. Now, I mentioned earlier, Knock 'em Down is going to be one of our aspects. The other one is going to be On Your Mark. I would like to use GPG instead. However, I'm going to be using 5 fragments for this build. Gunpowder Gamble only gives us 2, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to use On Your Mark instead, because that gives us 3. As for the fragments, here they are on screen from left to right. First, we have Ember of Searing. This will give us a Fire Sprite and also grant us melee energy anytime we defeat scorched targets. The second fragment is Ember of Combustion. Final Blows with our Solar Super causes targets to ignite, so we get our ignitions back from that change. And you also create a Fire Sprite. The reason I keep mentioning Fire Sprite is because of our third fragment, which is going to be Ember of Mercy. When picking up a Fire Sprite, we get Restoration. And additionally, you also get Resto from reviving an ally. The fourth fragment is going to be Ember of Solace. Radiant and Restoration effects applied to you have increased duration, so you're going to get 10 seconds instead of 4. And lastly, we have Ember of Torches, as I mentioned earlier. Power melee attacks against combatants make you and your allies radiant. The idea here is going to be to create fire sprites to give us infinite restoration, so we'll always be healing on demand, and we have several sources on how to do this. First, our melee will scorch targets, which means when we kill something that's scorched, Ember of Searing will give us a fire sprite. Additionally, our super, when it kills something and causes an ignition, that will create a fire sprite. And our weapon of choice in the energy slot for this build, Sunshot, is going to scorch everything you're shooting, and when they die, that again will create a fire sprite. Your other two weapons could be whatever you want, but most people are probably going to go with Mint Retrograde because it's just incredibly busted. In the heavy slot, though, you could go for another solar weapon to combine with the synergy of the build. Now, with that set up, we have one more trick up our sleeves to make this build even crazier before I go into armor mods. Here's the clip. Alright, boys and girls, keep an eye on the bottom left of the screen, right above where the super is. So as you can see, not only do we get to fire unlimited golden gun shots for as long as there are enemies on the field, but we also quite literally turn ourselves into an orb factory for our teammates, feeding them as many orbs of power as they want. And this just never ends. As long as there's enemies and you're in your super, you will keep making orbs non-effing stop, thanks to our setup with our mods. So let's go to that now. Alright, starting with the helmet. First, we have one copy of Super Font, like I mentioned earlier. This gives us 200 super. Then we have one copy of Hands On. This gives us super energy when I get melee kills with my throwing knives to get our super faster. And then one copy of Power Preservation. So this is how you're making a billion orbs in your super. Normally, you make like 7 orbs of Golden Gun, I believe the max is. But if you have this on, it just keeps going and going and going and going. Next up, gloves. Like I mentioned earlier, 3 copies of Heavy Handed for our throwing knife combining with Hands On. In our chest, it's just resist mods, nothing crazy. In boots, I have 1 copy of Recuperation to give me health when I pick up an orb, 1 copy of Insulation to give me class ability cooldown when I get an orb, and then 1 copy of Strand Scab just to get mint ammo if I happen to need it. And for my class item, I have 2 copies of Distribution to lower the cooldown of my super, but it does say all abilities, so that's a bonus, I guess. And then 1 copy of Powerful Attraction to scoop up orbs when I do use my class ability. For Artifact, there's nothing mandatory, but here's a few that can help you out. Fever and Chill gives you Radiant when you have precision hits with a solar weapon, in this case Sunshot. Radiant Shrapnel is just literally free damage when you're Radiant, so that's an easy setup. And Shield Crush allows you to get your grenade back faster when you are Radiant, so you have extra healing nades on demand. And that is how you have infinite super and infinite orbs all within one Golden Gun casting. The build is a ton of fun, and if you like messing around in mid-level content, I highly recommend you try it out as a hunter. I do want to put a disclaimer though, and say you shouldn't bring this specific build into under-leveled high-end content where you're going to be negative 20, negative 30, and so on, because you are not going to be able to one-shot enemies with Golden Gun, especially things that aren't red bars. And obviously, if you're not one-shotting, you're not getting refunded ammo back, and then you will lose your super very quickly. But hey, you play how you want, I'm not your dad. I'll leave a dim link for this build down in the description below, in case you want to try it out on your own. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you could leave a like and or a comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you could leave High Noon as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.